Be perfect. In several places in the Bible, Jesus calls us to be perfect. Verses like these have put a lot of pressure on some people to look, act, and feel perfect. The natural outgrowth of this thinking is perfectionism, the refusal to accept anything short of perfection. Does that sound familiar? There's lots of places where perfectionism is a dominant worldview, and unfortunately, the church is one of them. Under the paradigm of perfectionism, we have a hard time accepting criticism because our faith is not in Jesus and his unconditional love for us. It's in our ability to earn love and acceptance by being without blemish. Because of this, when somebody comes to us with legitimate criticism, we often either give it too much thought, becoming anxious and crumbling under the weight of falling short, or too little thought, becoming defensive, arrogant, and angry at the person bringing the grievance. The next step is often for somebody to comply out of shame or to cast aside the helpful correction as meaningless or uninformed. Both of these are an attempt at achieving perfection, either with shame-fueled compliance or by sticking our fingers in our ears and saying, "I can't hear you." But Jesus does not desire either of these outcomes for us. He desires for us to cast aside criticism that is not legitimate, but he also desires for us to take legitimate criticism as a loving guide to actual growth, to better relationships with ourselves and others. In Matthew 5:48, Jesus says, "Be perfect, just as your heavenly Father is perfect." If we look at the verses preceding this, we see he's not talking about wearing the right clothes, singing the right songs, eating the right food, or even observing the Sabbath the correct way. In verses 43 through 48, Jesus is talking about loving our enemies. "But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous." Being perfect in the biblical way does not mean you don't make mistakes. It means you're trying to learn and grow into loving others. It means we take our identity in Jesus seriously. It means we see others' personhood in Jesus as legitimate, and thus desire to learn to love them more fully. Change that comes from perfectionism is not real, and it's not sustainable. We must be healthy in order for us to actually grow. And that starts with understanding that we will always fall short, and our identity and salvation are in Jesus. That way, we can admit when we are wrong without losing our self-worth. Perfect is the journey of a lifetime. There will never be a moment where we arrive. So cut yourself a break. Making a mistake does not have to be the end of the world for you. Instead, it can be a beautiful beginning toward growth.